The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans. Season 7 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Time Bomb Trading, who are the Canadian distributors of Dragon and Stance, plus way more, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Stance has changed the way we think about comfort for our feet, producing the best socks for everyday wear and performance. The Stance Snow Performance Blend socks are designed to keep you moving with performance cushioning that combines impact protection with comfort, performance arch support which fights off strain and fatigue, ankle protection engineered to save your feet from annoying friction, Feel 360 technology, a proprietary fiber treatment that adapts and reacts to the foot to create the freshest and driest comfort experience. Stance Infinite, which gives their socks increased durability and makes sure they're guaranteed for life. No more rips, tears, or holes. They've got collaborations with Beavis and Butthead, Wu-Tang Clan, and Biggie Smalls. And Stance wants to give FNRad listeners a discount. Use code FNRAD10 at checkout at stance.ca. Support also comes from Grouse Mountain, Mount Seymour, New Greens, GoPro, and Volcom Gore-Tex outerwear. Kevin Kinnear was the first managing editor of Transworld Snowboarding Magazine. His surfing background, killer artistic eye for style, and genuine excitement for the new energy of snowboarding combined to create magazines that brought many of us into the fold.
Well, we were all in Oceanside, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
Not for a skate magazine. It was made perfect sense there, but it was just amazing how much stuff happened not in the mountains, like Chuck Barfoot and Tom Sims moving to Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And living in a commune together. And and then all the skateboard industry was down here. So it was an extension of Transworld Skateboarding Magazine. And I did a surf magazine called Breakout the first half of the 80s, and that's where I learned how to do magazines. I was an underground surfer, surfing blacks mostly during the 70s, and very introverted and surfed by myself all the time. And then all of a sudden, there was a contest, a Stubby's Pro Trials at Blacks, and I happened to know a couple of the finalists. So I said, I can interview them.
Right.
And Breakout was like a 25-cent black and white magazine that was free.
Cool.
Oh, no, 25 cents, almost free. And so I submitted it to them and the interviews, and they ran them. There was a young editor named Bob Yaling, and that's how I learned magazines. Went from being a total introvert to like all of a sudden I'm doing interviews, and that, of course, drags you out of yourself, and you get to talk to very interesting people, and that started my whole journalism career. I graduated from UCSD with a degree in cultural anthropology. Wow. And I thought that was kind of a useless degree, but then afterwards I went, okay, I've been dealing with all the modern primitive tribes.
Yeah.
Surfers, skateboarders, snowboarders, and musicians. Yeah. Because they ended up running one of the best guitar stores in the world after it was all done. So it all made sense.
That's so rad.
It was, and they were all the primitive cultures that became mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Did you shoot photos as well for your articles, or it was just...
Guy Motil was my photo editor, and the amazing thing was neither one of us had ever been in the snow. So we didn't know how to ride chairlifts. We didn't know how to dress. We both wore Levi's to Breckenridge's half pipe. And we had to get a skidoo to carry us up to the race course. And Guy pulls out his camera. He had the best equipment. He had like Contax cameras and Zeiss lenses. Pulls the camera up just as there's a bitchin' crash and somebody's upside down with his head skimming. And Motil got the whole sequence sharp.
No
His
way.
very first snowboarding shots and ran him as a center spread in the first issue.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I was with the best surfing, skateboarding, action sports sharpshooter I could possibly get. He'd been photo editor for Surfer Magazine. He was a legend in skateboard photography along with James Casmus and Warren Bolster. And he'd done windsurfing. He'd done a lot of stuff and was used to breaking in new sports. So he was intrigued by this new thing that his instincts were like mine. It was going to blow up. Yeah. Because the first time I took a lesson in Breckenridge, I got the shit beat out of me. I went, this is surfing for the rest of the world.
That's exactly
Whoever
what it
doesn't
is.
have a beach, this is it.
Yes.
Of course, it ended up being like skateboarding, the freestyle end of it. But I got the gist of it. This was a really cool thing. It was fun once you got past the learning curve, and it was going to explode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when Larry Baum, after our first lessons in probably November, December of 1986, when I was editor of the Transworld Skateboarding, we went and had lessons, 10 of us at Breckenridge, from a guy named Steve Fisher, I think, who was substituting for Kerry Hannon, who helped us out quite a bit. But we all had new Kidwell boards, because I knew Dave Weaver from being my neighbor in Del Mar.
Wow.
Who always tried to get me to go snowboarding. And I'd go, I'm not going to leave the beach for a day, and I'm not going to pay to do anything.
Yeah.
But he ended up being Sim's right-hand man, and said, as well as my neighbor in Del Mar. And all of a sudden, he's really important in the sport. Sim's licensed vision, and Dave's set us up with all these new Kidwell roundtails that nobody's seen.
Nice.
So all these kooks are in the mountain of Colorado with these incredible boards, and everyone's just going, who the hell are these guys? So that was and then Dave Weaver went to Quicksilver, France for surfing. So in a way, we tag teamed, we just slapped and traded places.
Rad.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
And he was just my surf buddy in Del Mar. I had neither one of us had a clue he'd be in snowboarding.
That's
and
incredible.
I sure didn't imagine it.
What was the schedule for year one? Was it quarterly or something? Not quarterly. Was it like four mags for
we
the
did
first?
two the first year.
Just two. So
no, I think we did three the first year. We took 2 trips, and I think we did 3 issues.
yeah, and Dave Achenbach's on the cover of the first one.
Yeah, we only went to 2 contests. Well, first we had the lesson where it was brutal, and then Larry Bauma took me to lunch at the Horseshoe 2 in Breckenridge. And he said, do you want to start a snowboard magazine? And he was really smart about it. He'd done snowboard stories during the season in the skateboard magazine.
Right.
Because he knew how to grow a sport.
Yeah.
But he knew it would take exposure and it would take a while. And so he'd have Jake and Tom write stories and got the ball rolling. So he was really the genius behind getting the concept established. And we were ahead of the market.
Yeah.
It was really tough. And he and his partner, Peggy, stuck it out. But he asked me if I wanted to do a snowboard magazine. I said, yeah, I know exactly what I'd do. I'll do a surf magazine for the snow.
Right.
So I knew how stale the skeet magazines were. And we consciously didn't want it to be as radical as Thrasher. I mean, the skateboard magazine that Larry and Peggy started was a mom's concern for her sons growing up on Thrasher. So she wanted to do kind of the clean version of that. And that's what Transworld was. We'll just focus more on the sport, not the lifestyle so much.
Right.
It wasn't punk rock, even though Grant Britton was definitely into progressive music.
Yes.
And, but he got our own flavor there. But Guy Motil very consciously did not shoot it like a skate magazine. He stayed away from the wide angle lenses, from fish eyes.
Yeah.
He used medium telephotos and things. He wanted to give it a different look.
That straight lens shot of Doug Lundgren is
the wind lip.
That is also one of the top 10 images, top 5 images of snowboarding ever.
When we saw that thing hit the light table, we were going, "Oh my God! It's totally fake."
Right.
You can't survive that landing. There's just no way in hell.
And it's close too. That landing is quite flat, man. It's not. I've hit that wind lip, not like that. But I remember seeing that in a magazine and being like, "Oh my God."
That day was, of course, Ken Achenbach was the one who led us there.
Yeah.
And he was, the merry prankster who kind of showed us all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And boy, that day was just amazing. It was just, the weather was absolutely perfect, and Damien was there, and Dana Nicholson, and Doug just surprised the shit out of everyone by just going, okay, my turn.
He hiked up. Boom. He hiked up way farther than everybody. And just sent it to the moon.
And then we shot Boyer doing a lip slide down below. We shot Evan Feen going off a little cliff off to the side. Motil was the master of multi-tracking everything.
Yes, yeah.
He, whether it was Rankwit on one of our first photo shoots, he'd say, "Wear my North Face jacket. It's red. It'll show up. Now put the hood up.
Nice.
Now take it off." And just make it seem like it was 3 different days on the same shoot. And that's where I got my first photograph, was Rankwood going horizontal, leaving a little snow trail that I shot with my Nikon One Touch automatic camera.
Come on.
That Motil was smart enough to said, here, let's get you a camera. You shoot everything. I'm not shooting. But I got some good action shots with that damn thing. And so he was the one who set me up to shoot photos, which I'd never done before.
Wow.
And I was thrilled, to have that. And now I've turned into a photographer because I realized it's a lot easier than fixing other people's writing. It's your own stuff, and it's a lot more fun that way. But no, Guy was extremely strategic. He'd had all the experience in the world doing magazines. He'd been my mentor at Breakout on how to do magazines. So I was kind of paying him back by pulling him on board with this. And I knew he'd be up for the adventure. The only problem was getting around the mountain, which ends up being the hardest thing to overcome. So it was, a couple of seasons with Guy. And then he gave me John Foster, who he had trained for Breakout. And he basically said, here. And that was awesome. John turned into a great photo editor. And he was a surf photographer from Windansea. And Guy put him under his wing. And boom, it worked out. So he got very lucky. Guy was extremely generous doing that, training his replacement.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah. What were the editorial stories like in those first? I remember reading them cover to cover. Like I remember reading every single word, and that the phone numbers for the companies were there. You could call and talk to the people that were running these companies. You ran a directory of their phone numbers in the back.
The blacklist kind of flopped. First, it was the places you could ride.
Right.
Because that was a very short list. And then it was the places you couldn't ride.
Yeah.
And no, it was amazing how much work we did, ambassador work, which Tom did, Sims did, Burton did, everybody. And everybody who was involved, we were about the same age. Paul Alden was a little older, but he did a lot of ambassador work. He'd done work at the resorts with lift towers or something, so he had an inside connection in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And that helped tremendously open those resorts. Carrie Hannon was a local skier who converted over, and she was the world mogul champion, women's mogul champion that year. Because 87 was when everything changed. I just happened to walk onto the scene. One thing, the boards are finally resort friendly.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I missed, it would have been fun hiking, but at least I got to ride boards with edges and high backs.
Yeah.
And the half pipe was finally, compared to the year before, 87, there was kind of a real half pipe.
Yep.
And so Guy and I show up. Ken Achenbach's the first person we ran into. Is, let's go to lunch.
Nice.
And so with him and the whole group from Calgary, with Lester Kitsow wasn't there. He was very primary and just one of my favorite musicians in the world still. And so Guy, Ken was totally open. He'd heard about Breakout Magazine, our surf magazine that Guy and I worked on. So he knew who we were, which was tremendous. That was a huge advantage. And he was stoked. He was a surfer. So he put up with us being kooks and helped us get past that stage in a very, very important way.
Oh, rad.
He was so friendly and so, of course, he'd get us in a lot of trouble because he'd always want to put you in places you weren't terribly comfortable. We went to a Much Fun Snowcat thing in Fernie when we could barely ride. And they were saying, there's a run called Almost Evan, because Evan Feen had been down there and hung onto a tree when the slide went by.
Oh, wow.
So there was it was our first real powder trip. But Ken pushed us. He took us places like out of bounds for that first cover shot at Sunshine Village with his brother. Of course, he never got over it. But Dave hit this thing, and Guy was set up just like a classic skate shot. And there's a skier in the corner watching the future unfold in front of him, which I thought was the most incredible thing. And then he shot it into the sun, full artist, beautiful rendering of snowboarding with a skier watching the whole thing happen. Yeah. And of course, that was illegal. We were out of bounds just a little bit. But Ken, of course, that's the first place he wanted to go to hit this quarter pipe. So thank God for the people that helped us out when we just knew nothing.
At the 87 Worlds, you see a couple of people you recognize, right? Like Burt Lamar.
Well, Burt Lamar, I didn't know that much from skating, but I obviously knew who he was.
Yeah.
But by then he was even a little bit, past his prime on
for skateboarding, obviously.
But he was smart enough to come right in, and we're all going, "Who the hell? What's he doing?" And he just started riding. I mean, he did not have that much experience, so what he did was pretty amazing.
Right.
To be able to win that thing with not that much experience on snow, but he was that good of a skater.
Yeah, weren't you saying he was like 4 days in or something?
I don't know if it was 4 days, but it wasn't much.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
And I'm sure I've got it written down somewhere. But Bert kind of in a lot of ways professionalized it overnight because he knew how to compete. He really had that down. And all the pros for snowboarding were pretty new at it.
Yeah.
But he was a seasoned veteran as far as competition goes. And just had incredible skills.
He knew how to put together a sponsorship package too, right?
Sponsorship package.
Yeah,
He knew how to put together a run.
He
knew that the whole line had to be good, and he was good at choreographing and stuff. And kind of, in a way, schooled a lot of people. I mean, Craig Kelly was pissed.
Totally. Yeah.
But we were all kind of amazed. And the other thing that came out of that contest was the first professional snowboard association. Originally called NASA, then they switched it to NASBA. But Paul Alden was running the show. The Europeans were there, which was super important. And your podcast with Donna Carpenter was great because she talked about how Europe got developed with Burton. And that was super important, the fact that they went global right off the bat and had a serious effort in Europe and brought them over. I mean, Peter Bauer, Jean Nerva, Petra Music showed up. People came.
Yeah.
There was participation, and we did contests in Europe right off the bat. And that was super important that it was globally oriented instead of just having one contest in the U.S.
Right.
So Paul, then running the thing caused me great concern because he was an employee of Burton.
Right.
And I'd just come out of my surfing background where I'd watched the whole pro tour develop. So I had incredible experience with a sport growing. With surfing, I could almost look into the future of snowboarding just by what I'd already experienced. I had a real strong sense of history. So I knew that all these people I was watching were going to be legends one day, even though they didn't have any clue what they were going to become. But just by the mere fact that they were there. I helped start a surf museum in Oceanside called the California Surf Museum in 1986. Right before I worked for the Skateboard Magazine or created Transworld Snowboarding. So I had a real strong sense of history, and I was looking for that everywhere in the sport, knowing that everything that happened was going to be precious and priceless. And I grew up worshiping magazines. I lived and died by the surf magazines. Started with Surfer. I could remember ads, pages, shots, all my major. So I was passionate about magazines. And I knew how important they were to people doing it. So Guy and I show up in our Levi's. I think my wife made some rip-stop cover for my pants. It wasn't quite waterproof. But we walked up to the half pipe, and there's about 35 pros in the world.
Yeah.
And Terry Kidwell was the real standout. Craig Kelly was. Poor Rocket Reeves, I misidentified him, I think 3 times in the first issue. I called him Craig Kelly because he was wearing the same sweatshirt or something.
Yeah.
And poor Rocket, I don't think I ever got it right.
Oh, wow.
And he was hotter than hell and just a kid.
Really?
Yeah, he was really on fire that day because we ran 3 shots of him, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but I did get Craig right and Terry Kidwell. So I got the bright idea.
Was Palmer there too?
What?
Palmer was at that one?
Yeah. Palmer was there.
Yeah.
The whole gang was there.
Yeah.
So Damien was especially important because he was showing us pictures of Brandy on the side of the half pipe without her clothes on.
Come on, really? That was happening?
It was pretty funny. It was a foreshadowing of stuff to come. Well, maybe she was wearing something, but
not much.
He was sharing.
Yeah.
And Brandy was sitting right there, so it was pretty funny. But what a sweet couple they were.
What a sweet couple.
They were just incredible.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there around the half pipe, and I get the bright idea saying, well, all I got to do is stay ahead of all these thousands of people behind me who haven't started yet.
Right.
I'm a kook.
Yeah.
These guys are pros.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in between.
Right.
It's like there's a bunch of people, there's pockets everywhere, I found out. And the first pocket we met was the Calgary gang with Ken Achenbach, who was probably the loosest and the funnest group of the bunch.
Who's that? Like who was his group of
his
guys
brother
at that point? Yeah.
He and Dave, and then Neil DeFern, who ended up dying far too young, and he was working on twin tips, which is what made Barfoot famous at first, was the twin tip, and then was Neil working. I think he was doing storm boards. So Lester Kitsow played at the awards. He wasn't at Breckenridge, but he played at the awards for the North American contest at Sunshine Village.
Yeah.
And that was fabulous, hearing him play on the deck. But
where was Evan Fiend based out of?
Evan was in there. That was one of the Barfoot's main guys.
Yeah.
And it was really a cool group of people.
Probably Boyer at that point too. Would have been a kid
there.
Yeah.
Jay Balmer, maybe.
Oh, awesome.
It was quite the friendly group. It was fun. And over the years, they kind of stayed that way. Especially the Barfoot riders were always the most relaxed.
Yeah.
And so we go up, and I sit around the half pipe going, okay, what everyone wants to know who hasn't gotten in the sport is how these guys got into it. So I came up with the concept of the first time, because it was our first time, and I wanted to talk about their first time, so it kind of fit. And that was the theme for the first issue.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed everybody saying, what was your first time like? And we ran that in little blurbs, like pull quotes on the inside.
Rad.
And that was fun. It was really fun. I learned a lot. It was a great way to get to know everybody. So that first issue, you look through all the interviews, that was pretty much the who's who of who was in the sport at the time. And more Europeans the next year. But in the half pipe, they weren't really a force yet. But that first year, it was like everyone was pretty much represented, and the half pipe was good enough to get some pretty good shots. And it wasn't like the funky things happening up in Soda Springs. And so then we went to the race, and like I said, we had to give you Skidoo up there. A guy got that sequence and got introduced. And the next contest we went to was, the other thing that happened besides the pro association starting up, and that everyone had to agree on a schedule and make sure that Europe was included. And I had to get over my thoughts about Paul's complete conflict of interest working for Burton, and just went, okay, in the beginning, you got to find somebody who's got the brains to pull it off. And Burton was backing him, which was a damn good thing because nobody else could afford to do it.
Right.
So pragmatically, it made total sense. I mean, in hindsight. And so it was a clean slate from there, and not too much controversy right off, but everyone kind of got together and they planned to include Europe, which was super important for the development of the sport. It was international right off the bat when I came in.
Yeah.
And I backed that because, like I said, I'd had all the experience with surfing, which was international. I'd been through the same growing pains. I'd watched the pro association be taken over by a guy named Ian Cairns, who had backing from OP.
Ocean Pacific had a pretty big presence in snowboarding at the beginning too, with Dana Nicholson and Damien. Yeah,
they were huge.
But they didn't even really have anything that you could use. Like the Ocean Pacific stuff was windbreakers,
right? And fluorescent headbands.
And fluorescent headbands, exactly. Yeah, and in
surfing they were a huge presence. I'm surprised they didn't follow through stronger. But God, they couldn't pick a better guy than Damien.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there was a one-man marketing band. It was him.
Yeah. He got so much coverage in the first few years.
He did. He was incredible. I mean, he was the wild man of the bunch, even more than Palmer back then. And it was really fun shooting with Damien anytime we did it. And he and Dana were just kind of locked at the hip.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad they were at the wind lip. Nobody planned that. They just all kind of showed up cosmically.
Yeah.
But so what happened at that contest in Breckenridge was the Burton takeover of the Sims team. And Paul Alden was very much behind that. So that's when Craig, at least negotiations started, but that's where it began.
Yeah.
And then Mike Jacoby was the juniors champion, got signed up.
Right.
Carrie Hannon, who was a women's mogul champion, got signed up. Brad Reeser, who was the boys champion. It's like he went through and picked up every champion.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Sims was gutted.
Right.
And Burton was flying. And with Craig, they got the ultimate test pilot.
Totally.
And product development, which is what Burton was severely lacking. There, Sims had the technology.
Mm-hmm.
He had the riders. He had the glamour. And Sims was an incredible rider all on his own. I mean, going on a photo shoot with Tom was really cool. He was a great rider. But his problem was he was protecting his own position as the head guy.
Right.
Because he had been the head guy for so long. So when a guy like Craig came along and I was talking this over with Dave Weaver the other day. He said sometimes Tom would be a little bit holding these guys down because he didn't want them challenging him.
Yeah, that makes sense. I asked Palmer about that. I was like, because I speculated that maybe TK had a bit of resentment that this young kid is coming in. And, because Terry Kidwell was by all accounts the first real freestyle world champion. Right? Like pre the Burt Lamar thing and pre Craig.
Right. No, he was the guy, but Alan Armbruster was supposedly better.
Sure.
In Tahoe before he went away for kleptomania. And what's weird is there was a guy on the East Coast who also went away.
Really?
For being a thief.
No way.
And he was what's his name? He was the best guy on the Burton team. He could go heel side because he had this hand technique that nobody else had.
Yeah.
And he was just ripping, and then he went away for kleptomania too, for something like steal. His was maybe drug related, but it was funny that the two hottest guys kind of disappeared before anything happened.
Right.
Big.
Yeah, and then Palmer said to me about the TK thing, like, no, man, we're tight. Like we were buddies. But he does mention that Tom would compete against his team, right?
Yes.
And actually, that's an interesting story. But Palmer won either the second or the first Mount Baker bank slalom. And so the next year he's getting ready to go. And Tom goes, oh, sorry, we don't have budget to send you, kid.
Oh, geez.
And so he got money from Joel at Sessions and showed up there and saw Tom there and beat him. And then Tom was like, sorry.
Yeah, Tom had to win the first one because he set it up with Bob Barcy.
Right.
And
Tom won the first one. That's right.
In fact, it's funny, the USASA that I helped fund with $500 of Transworld's money, because Chuck Allen, who'd done the NSSA for surfing with these other coaches, I knew he'd pull it off. And I knew that the sport needed an amateur body that was not skiing.
Right.
So I arranged for the magazine to give them the money, and they have grown so incredibly well and successfully. They have like this multi-day championship at Copper Mountain every year. Well, they called me in Santa Barbara and said, we want you to fly out and accept Bob Barcy's award, because he was the godfather of the Northwest. And he and Tom had invented the bank slalom together. And so I fly out there, all expenses paid, and I get there and going, wow, it's a lot of money for just accepting an award. So I accepted it, and then they gave me one afterwards.
Ah, sweet.
And that was so cool because nobody had ever recognized me in any way.
Really?
I said, it's interesting. The amateurs are the ones with the sense of history.
Yeah.
That the pros it's not that, it's not that part. It's not ingrained in the professional end of the sport. I mean, I didn't go to the Olympics. It's just.
Right.
It's just weird. But I was so proud of the fact that these guys were so pure and then recognized their history. And they had the letters that Chuck Allen and I exchanged about funding it, how important it was.
Rad.
How it was going to lead to, the Olympics. And that was the path. But I was I hadn't been in the sport, I hadn't snowboarded in a long time. And it was just really incredible to be recognized.
Ah, that's dope.
But you never know what seeds you're going to plant.
Yeah.
How they're going to do. You just know that you got to plant a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so when we were at Breckenridge, Carrie Hannon arranged to go up at Vail for the first time with snowboarders. And so a group of us, and I could barely ride. It might have been the next year. It probably was the next season that we did that. And they wanted us on the cat trails because that was the trickiest part about Vail, interacting with the snowboarders and skiers. And that was their biggest fear. So, of course, the mountain manager's following me, and I'd never made a run without falling yet. And there I was. I made a run without falling, and didn't ruin it for the whole sport. It was a lot of pressure. I think Guy was under the same kind of pressure, but Kerry was instrumental in just helping us out and getting it opened up, because Vail was huge.
Yeah, obviously.
It was a gigantic, and then Squaw later on.
Yeah.
And I think that 87... I was like 36 years old, I think. I was born in 51.
Yeah.
And so being one of the adults in this, one of the few adults in
very,
this sport,
very few adults, yeah.
Me and Jake and Tom and Chuck were all about the same age, and all a little older.
Yeah.
But we all would go in there and introduce ourselves and say, can we shoot? And this is cool. Can we? And that's what we spent a lot of time doing. I was the only one who was not affiliated with a company, so that made it a little bit easier,
right? Because
I could represent everyone,
right?
And but we were all. That's one thing we all agreed on. Brian Selstrom came on board as our main business head, and he kept saying that you got to make the pie bigger so everyone's piece can be bigger.
Yeah,
but if you can't make the whole pie bigger, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's
had been
smart.
Financial guy at a very young age with Psychology Today, which started in Del Mar, right here.
Oh, no way.
All these buildings around there, like the one facing the ocean, that was one of his offices.
Oh, man.
So he brought that expertise from starting Psychology Today, which was a very successful magazine that moved to New York.
Yeah.
But he'd had that experience, so that was kind of priceless for us. He knew the game. And yeah, that really helped us out a lot. He's also the one that arranged to sell us out to the ski magazines.
Oh, no.
Which drove me nuts.
Yeah. So I grew up with, I'm sure I saw that Dave Ock issue 1, like when it was current. I can remember them showing up at the grocery store. You know what I mean? And it was
good. We had better distribution than I thought.
yeah. Up in Canada, I would read them, and once I got my hands on them, it was like cover to cover, like I said.
Well, did you see Absolutely Radical? Did you ever see the first issue of that?
No. I started I've seen Absolutely Radical, like I've leafed through it, and oh my God, like.
The East Coast kleptomaniac or thief was Doug Bouton.
Doug Bouton.
I think he was a klepto, and the armbruster was just a drug thief.
Okay.
So different thing. An armbruster ended up going to jail. But anyway.
That takes him out of the scene.
That guy was major.
Yeah.
On the East Coast, because he could turn heel side on ice.
Yeah, that's nuts. So I'm watching, I have a body memory of watching Transworld go from thin editorial stuff and also like the ads being informational, you know what I mean? Like you just, okay, so now there's Team Buttocks or whatever.
Right.
You're going, okay, what is that? I remember a Skull Skates ad for Crystal Oceans or something, and where he said his clothing was 100% water soaking cotton or whatever, it was
you remember
was
the
fun.
Quimbola Man ads?
Quimbola Man.
That was the quintessential symbol of the sport to me.
Sure.
I mean, I got some as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Fran Richards, I'd hired because he was the first guy I'd ever met who had a marketing degree.
Yeah.
And knew how to snowboard. And Fran was super key in getting us up to speed.
Yeah. So those first few years, the magazine goes from fledgling to like, it's obviously successful. There's enough advertising in it to run the magazine.
Oh shit. It was the size of Bride magazine.
Yeah, but that's like 93 or something.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, by 93, that for me as a 20-year-old guy who's grown up just consuming this magazine and everything in it, to start seeing ads that didn't speak to me, I think I was pretty critical of it, right? Like because I was such a. I
don't blame you.
Yeah. I know.
We were pretty critical of it. The editorial side. I mean, it was like, we're running an ad for what?
Yeah.
You started going, oh shit.
Yeah.
We really crossed over. And the critical point was about 5 years in, they sold out to the ski magazines, which, they're probably the only guys that had the money.
Yeah.
And Brian knew enough as a businessman that, at some point you sell out.
Right.
unfortunately, I didn't really make a whole lot of money off of that deal. I learned the lesson that even if you created something from scratch and if you don't own it and they sell it, you don't get anything.
Oh, wow.
You don't get any shares.
Yeah.
And, I just was so disappointed. Well, I was disappointed that we didn't have control anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's recognize it right here, right now. Like that feel of that magazine came from your vision, your imagination. So thank you very, very much for that. Because without Transworld Magazine, I don't get into snowboarding because I just don't have any exposure to the imagery. It's incredible how that magazine actually told us how to snowboard. It's like if you're not the backflipper guy in the crew, then you get yourself a camera, if you're not going to be the pro guy, get yourself a handy cam, get yourself a camera, start taking pictures.
Well, it's funny because that first issue, I think, has a picture of Guy learning how to snowboard that I took the pictures of.
That's awesome.
Because like I said, it was so meta. We knew so much how to do stuff, but we did not know how to snowboard.
Right.
And that was a pretty big gap. I mean, it was God, and especially for him with that backpack he had to carry. Like I said, years later, I think he let Craig Kelly carry it around for a while, and Craig gave it back and said, "I don't want to do that again." So it was tough. And Guy, the first real day of the second, so the first we went to Breckenridge, Pro Association, Sims team goes Burton, Paul Alden signs everybody up, and you should interview Dennis Jensen at some point to talk about what happened when he came on board and really professionalized Burton, because he was a serious marketing guy from out of industry and just did worlds of good for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, because we'd met Ken, he says, "Oh, come to my contest. It's the North American Championships." I'm going, "Shit, that sounds pretty big." Well, it wasn't, but that's Ken. But Jose Fernandez is there. He did a backflip out of the bottom of the half pipe and won. And they're playing AC/DC as loud as they could. It was awesome. I mean, it was such a cool small town experience, and hanging out at his shop and meeting all the kids. And we went up there and had a great time. But that's what it was. It was a party, and Chris Carroll, kind of called it.
Yeah.
The North American big party kind of thing. But Chris was there competing, but it was just a really cool experience. It was pure snowboarding. But there I am, and I've got a picture of it sitting on the hill in back of the mogul run, wearing my Sears Roebuck parka. I think I might have some waterproof pants, I'm not sure. And freezing my ass off, not dressed right, but there's a picture of, all these people in the background. And Guy and I had to go over to the half pipe, which was across a snowfield, and we didn't know how to ride. So we were wading over there, and we were up to our neck in snow, right underneath the lift that everybody was taking. And everyone's just laughing their ass off at these guys from California, surfers from California. And we're swimming.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to race Guy to see who can get to dry land first. It was so funny. I wanted to get up there and take a picture of him, wallowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was the most humiliating possible thing that could have happened. And it was just funny. And then we went and watched the half pipe freezing. But it was amazing. We pulled it off. It really was. And I got to hand it to Tom Shea for doing a magazine at 19 years old.
Yeah.
Absolutely radical. And Dave Weaver had introduced me to him at a trade show where he had his first booth.
Oh, rad.
Before I ever thought about getting into snowboarding, but I encouraged him. I said, "Man, this is great. We did a surf magazine. You can do it. It'll be cool." And then he changed the name because they told him it was too radical. But I feel bad for Tom because he got outgunned pretty much because we had all the experience and we had more money than he did.
The early adopters often do, right? Look at Dimitri.
Yeah. Well, he needed a couple of more years of head start.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Bud Fawcett, I got to hand it to him. He ended up being, it was funny because the difference between him and Motil was Motil could motor drive a sequence.
Yeah.
And Bud had no money. So he'd take a roll of 36 out and he was a sniper. He would single shot it. And good luck, because without being able to go through a lot of photos, it's hard to get good fast. But Bud did it. He pulled off some incredible shots.
Who were the riders that would come directly to Transworld headquarters early on and try and get their photos in there, try and get your ear and say like, "Hey, run some of this stuff.
Yeah, we never got manipulated like that. But the funnest one was Damien and Brandy.
Yep.
Showing up for the photo shoot where he's on his motorcycle.
Yep.
And so I'm driving John Foster's truck. Lee Crane, of course, is trying to catch Brandy changing. He's in the back in this trailer. And we're all just kind of, he's all hyped up. He was my new under assistant editor.
Yeah.
And Lee did a great job, but John and I went out to shoot it in the back roads of Escondido on old 395. And he was in the back shooting, and it just came out so damn good.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the most classic shot. And so that was the one I really do remember.
I remember there was an issue where it had to be either a buyer's guide or something. It was a gear guide where you made cutouts. Steve Graham was one. I don't remember.
Like paper dolls.
Paper dolls, and then you could cut out the jackets and put them on.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that was fun.
We had a great art department. Sean Rogers was running it. She was key to our success because she was extremely well organized, disciplined, and kept all us assholes on time.
Yeah, nice.
We were all late.
Yeah.
That's a classic thing. But Sean did a great job. She was part of us getting professionalized. I mean, because at the beginning, we were like 8 employees. It was very small.
When did Tiny Type come in and Angry Intern and all that stuff?
Lee Crane had a lot to do with that. Billy Miller was the genius of that stuff.
Brad.
He was part of the snowball crowd that we met at Wolf Creek.
Yeah.
With Brad Stewart.
Nice.
At the first contest of the season in '88.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the North Americans. Then we went home and made the magazine when the surf is going off.
Right.
And going, shit, this is really hard. And went to Wolf Creek, the first contest in 1988. Met Brad Stewart, Billy Miller, Jimmy Scott was with him doing ho-ho plants. That's all he could do.
Nice.
But he did them.
Yeah.
And Brad was he was extremely bright. I connected with him right away. Billy
was he
Miller
with Sims at that point, or was
yeah. He wasn't running it, but he ended up doing that, being a team manager. But Billy Miller, Brian Harper.
Oh yeah,
it was
Harper.
Another really friendly bitchin' crew that were very humble, just like the Calgary guys. So one by one, we met the Pockets. The real incredible miracle was after Wolf Creek, which is kind of a funky half pipe, but that's where I ran to Fran Richards.
Yeah.
And he was the drunk head judge.
Nice.
Along with Maynard, who was running the thing, Mike Maynard. And he was running the Southwest, which was kind of a really out there scene. I mean, like Wolf Creek, all these places were not in the mainstream at all, even for Colorado. But Mike Maynard had a series going super early.
Wow.
That not many people know about. So this is one of those. Fran is with him trying to figure out the prizes, and having a hard time. And I was going, I don't know about this guy. And they were ISM guys. So that we were being looked at sideways. Like, who the fuck are these people?
Right.
But Fran ended up being, like I said, the only guy with a marketing degree. And he'd come to California for a skateboard wheel deal that went bad. And I liked him a lot and hired him. So he was the first real snowboarder we hired. Jim Gray was doing it before that, doing the ad sales. And he was number 7 in the world for skateboarding. But I said, here's a guy who's super bright. He's never going to be number 1. So I'm going to get him to do something useful. Besides, I'm going to put him to work.
Yeah.
So he was a great choice. He was super smart, charismatic. And he went to Las Vegas and somehow bullshitted his way into SIA. We didn't have a pass.
Oh, wow.
But he went in and met Jake and Tom and just did a terrific job because he was bulletproof.
Yep.
He was nuts. So I am very grateful to him. And then Fran came on as the legitimate snowboard guy. And they did it together for a while. But Fran was with us through the whole thing.
So yeah, like when I'm thinking from my experience, the articles, the words, like there was a lot less in the beginning, and then once those guys come on, you start having a kind of a community feel. Like you're starting to feel what it's like to be, an international snowboarder that travels around.
I definitely tried to, like Craig Kelly wrote a tips thing. I tried to include.
I remember that one.
I knew how it worked.
Yep.
From doing the surf magazine, so I tried to get as many personalities in there as I can and capture the soul of the sport, which was the people. Mm-hmm. Let them speak as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And this thing could be very inclusive. That was the thing for me within the sport, and then being friendly toward the resorts to get in, because and it was very hard when the skaters hit.
Yeah.
Because they're used to running away from the cops.
Totally.
And that's their lifestyle. And all of a sudden they have to deal with ski patrol. And to them, it's just another cop. So
yeah.
They didn't really show a lot of restraint. And then when the jibbers hit.
Yeah.
And I just saw Dale Rayberg and shot pictures of his son surfing.
Oh, sweet.
And Dale's in San Clemente. He's wonderful. But he was one of the guys from Wisconsin that came and rode everything.
Yeah, Dale and Rowan. Yeah.
It was like, holy shit, trying to account for that with the mountain managers was something else.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when that would be, 90, 91
kind of 90s, thing? Yeah. They were right out of Wisconsin. They've been riding resorts that had no snow.
Yeah.
So they were riding everything else. It made total sense.
Yeah.
It just happened to catch on.
Yeah, right.
And there was street skating for the snow. I mean, it was like
100%.
And
Mac Dog coming up.
And those guys were the most innocent bunch of kids I'd ever met, but they didn't know. They were just doing what they knew how to do. They weren't intending to cause major upheaval in the growth of the sport.
Yeah, that would be later with Sean and Sean.
Because before it was like the problem was there were too many beginners sprawled across the runs, sitting in the way.
Right.
Because they didn't know any better. It was an innocent thing.
Totally.
And just by having that many beginners at the same time. And then it became more intentional when they were just riding snowblowers and stuff. And they weren't intending to cause any harm. It just got taken that way. So we had some real challenges trying to grow it at first. And then, of course, it got too overblown.
Right.
The magazine's huge, full of ads you really don't want to see.
Sure.
And the sport is full of companies you don't really want to see.
Right.
And SIA is so big, they put us in our own section.
I remember that, yeah.
The segregation, that was hilarious. And realized nobody was at their booths.
Right.
Ski booths.
Right.
So, but it was fun, but it got to be totally insane.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, Lee Crane was my editor, and he decided to leave, I think, a couple of weeks after deadline to go do an online gig.
Oh, wow.
And the magazine was getting huge, and I just went, holy fuck.
Yeah.
And I turned around to Jamie Meiselman, who was under Lee, and I said, okay, are you ready? And he was. Yep. Jamie was from Dartmouth. He had an extremely good East Coast work ethic.
Yeah.
And he was super sharp, and he fucking dug in and pulled off a miracle. I mean, I just can't say how grateful I am to him enough. When we really had to produce a lot of stuff, he was the man.
Yeah. How does it go with content? Like, I mean, the list of staff photographers goes up, obviously. Yeah. Like in 93 or 94, I shot photos at the Transworld Industry Conference in Montana.
Big Sky,
Montana. And Rob Gracie was there. And I remember just like, because I'm this like kid that knows nothing from.
How old were you?
I was in 94, I'd be 21.
Okay.
And I'm still thinking Sean Palmer signs and Craig Kelly signs their boards. You know what I mean? Like I'm still thinking they're there building the boards, thinking, hey, I hope whoever gets this one really appreciates it or whatever. I have no idea about anything. And Rob Gracie's on skis and he's smoking cigarettes and chain smoking. I'm going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, really.
This is insane. But at the same time, I'm so like blown away that I'm this close to my dream of being in one of these magazines, right?
Some of those
in Transworld
some of those skiers are pretty useful, like Mark Gallup.
Gallup, yeah.
God, he kicked ass. He came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so, we certainly overcame any prejudice in favor of incredible photographs.
Absolutely.
And it was a good way to get around the mountain. I mean, it's like skis are a lot more stable platform
with packs and stuff too.
And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So That was a transition. And
Yep.
then people like Ron Dahlquist coming out of surfing into the winter stuff.
The only one to do it the other way is Scott Surface.
What'd
Scott,
he
he became a staff photographer for Transworld Surf, right? Like from Transworld Snow. And, you know, there's an era where every third photo was from Mount Seymour. You know, you got all those guys, Derek Catella up there, they're all shooting this one little spot that if you actually go to the resort, you're going, what the fuck is going on here?
No, I think I went there once.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Where are they getting all these epic shots from? But
I tell you that we went to Jay Peak
yeah.
with some really good riders, but there was nothing there.
Yeah.
We went in the flats and built a little kicker and got some shots. It was the phoniest thing we ever did. But those riders, I forget who it was, but it was pretty incredible, you know, when you have to do it. Or in Tahoe, we had Kidwell and Palmer and everybody under the sun and couldn't find any snow, but we went to pulled off the side of the road and did this little hillside thing.
Yeah.
And it worked out, but
Yeah.
it was like sometimes you really have to scratch.
Yeah, totally.
And then the fun discoveries were like Whistler had the pipeline, that one wave shaped thing.
Yeah.
On the Windlip trip, I think it was the same discovery.
Yeah.
And God, it was just everywhere you looked, there was something trippy to shoot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you guys are shooting in resorts, right? Like you're on resort. Tom Burt talked about how they, you know, basically solicited you guys and then resorts to make, you know, traveling trips happen.
They were the best organized group.
We're talking Tom Burt, Jim Zellers, Bonnie Leary.
Yeah, those three were extremely well organized, intelligent, and went about it in such a not scientific way, but they were just nice, rational people who figured it out. And anytime they pitched something, I'd go for it because they had their shit together.
Yeah.
And you knew they were going to come back with something.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the beginning of the backcountry stuff. They were like the backcountry people that we had before, you know, Craig or anybody else kind of went back there and did it. They specialized in that. And that was a nice flavor to have.
Oh, absolutely.
It was, and such cool people. I mean, Tom Burt showed me how to write powder at some point because I was getting too worn out. He said, no, try this and rebalance yourself. And extremely nice. And everyone was so nice back then.
Yeah.
You know, even Hetzel.
Oh, the story of the Kemper team. I talked to George Pappas, who was the original guy.
At that first day in Breckenridge, he was one of the stars. Both those guys, Chris and George, both.
Thank you for saying it on
were
mic.
very, very strong in that first Breckenridge contest.
You meet some people who just of their nature say, you know, I was never really that good. And you kind of feel like they believe it, you know?
No, that day they were that good.
Yeah, Pappas.
They were up there with everybody.
I said, you tricked me, Pappas, man. You seemed that good. I saw the photos of you. Like, you got those pro models. You earned that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
No argument there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Well, so the other revelation was after Wolf Creek, and Motil did the most amazingly horrible thing.
Oh.
He gets off the lift, first day of the season, got his pack on, gets about 10 feet and falls and sprains his ankle.
Oh, no.
Didn't say a word to me the whole season that his ankle was hurting like hell. And and especially when he was snowboarding, it really hurt.
Right.
Didn't say a word because he didn't want to lose his job.
Oh, man.
He knew that I would have to replace him if I knew that I would not put him through that. And he hiked Mount Baker from the top to the bottom because he couldn't ride. I mean, like, he did crazy shit and just, he's so gutsy and so determined and did not want to fail. And he pulled it off, man. I can't even believe it. I did not know this for years later, how much he suffered.
Oh, no.
And if he hadn't, I don't know who I would have replaced him with. I mean, I really don't know if we would have pulled it off. So Guy's my hero for just enduring horrible pain and getting us through that season. But the miraculous trips we took were to Mount Baker and Mount Bachelor and catching 2 sunny photo sessions.
Yeah.
Sunny. I mean, after the bank slalom, we went and hiked Hemispheres And we had Damien there and all the locals. I met Carter Turk on the mountain.
I remember that Damien shot from below Hemispheres off that
right,
lump.
The lower hill in Hemispheres. The guy just said, hit that.
I don't think anybody's ever shot anything on that ever.
That was like not a spot.
Yeah.
You didn't bother with that. It was all happening up there. The guy, he said, hey, guys, should I hit this? Sure. And Motil was just a master of pulling shit off, but Damien especially, he just knew.
Yeah.
But that was a classic shot. So it was a beautiful powder day. Nobody had been on the, up there. So we got Hemispheres new and all the locals, Dan Donnelly I met for the first time. And it was the coolest thing. I'm sitting there writing down names in a little notebook. I still got the notebook somewhere.
Oh, that's amazing.
Some people I've never heard of again.
Right.
But I would write down every name, description of the clothes so we could identify them later on. And it's a pretty impressive list. But just a classic, beautiful powder day that lasted, maybe one day, maybe two. But we'd met Evan Feen and Keith Kimmel.
Nice.
There. And they
Slasher.
and so they were like the Soul Brothers.
Yeah.
And Evan especially was so creative. But Kimmel and him were just a great team. And so they were kind of the core of the trip. And they followed us to Mount Bachelor in their VW van. I don't know, it was probably Keith's. And showed up there. So we had a core. And then at Bachelor, we met Chris Klug. And hang on. Anyway,
Chris Carroll?
No, not Chris Carroll. He was from there. But there was all the locals there who were really young. Like Klug was 15.
Oh, wow.
We were staying at his dad's end of the 7th Mountain, Chris Jameson.
Oh, Jameson, right.
Yeah, and he was a big gawky guy. So the whole gang was there, and God, who was it that got the cover shot from that? And we're kind of scratching for places to shoot. There's this little snow bowl we turned into a cover shot.
Wow.
With, oh God, they're going to kill me for not remembering who. But it was all the local guys. I don't think Rob Morrow was there on the first time. Well, we definitely went back and got him later.
Yeah.
By the way, he lives in San Clemente if you want to interview him.
Oh, I do.
He is unbelievable.
We did 2 hours on the phone, but I didn't record it.
You got to go hang with Rob.
Yeah. He's
one of my best friends out of the whole.
Oh, that's great.
I did
He's
his
the
first
real
interview.
deal. Yeah, nice.
That was fun, checking out his attic room full of shit.
There was a real era of Morrow. Hey, Todd's on there, Jana Mayan, Noah Brandon. Rob's still riding himself. He got a couple of covers.
No, Rob was incredible. He was like the wild card for the whole era.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, he was the juniors champion at Breckenridge that first year. But yeah, Rob to me has always been the epitome of the snowboarder.
Yeah.
He's got his headphones on. He's wearing the wrong clothes.
Yeah.
He's doing something incredible and not even giving a fuck.
Exactly.
He just looks like it's nothing.
Yeah.
His mom was a sweetheart. She used to go to all the contests and we'd hang out. And it was Rob's one of my favorites.
His family was involved in the snowboard company.
Well, because he came from one of the largest construction firms in Oregon. It was based in Salem. So he definitely enlisted the family. Yeah. To get the thing going.
I had Tucker Franson on last year. That was a great interview.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because Tucker worked. Tucker was also another one of those guys he was like a champion early on, like before the entire thing blew up. And then he was just happy to work. He was happy to work for Morrow and have his mornings to ride or something. Like he had his riding schedule worked out that, as a kid growing up, looking at people in the magazines, I thought that was the ultimate thing. Like that's what you wanted to do, was be one of these famous snowboarder guys. But really the cherry gig is the guy who doesn't have to work and doesn't have to answer to anybody. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to go to some contest somewhere and sit around and wait. He doesn't have to get photos somewhere and sit around and wait. He just gets to ride and ride and ride.
It's funny you would say that because I had the best job possible. I got paid to travel and snowboard, and I didn't have to prove anything.
That's it.
I didn't have to produce I had to produce something really good, but I guess I was. I had to do work, but it was just, I wasn't under the kind of pressure these guys were. I could just enjoy myself when I was there. Yeah. As long as I was paying attention.
Yeah. The currency is in is life money, is experience money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got to be there. Like I said, because of my surfing background, I could tell exactly what was going to happen. The evolution was going to happen. It wasn't going to be that much fun after a point. It would be professionalized, and and the amateur fun years would be over. Yeah. So I was really glad to be there when I was. Like I said, I was glad I got there after edges and high backs because I like turning. I never got in the air, so that wasn't a factor for me. Yeah. But later on with Snowboard Life, it was kind of a free riding magazine, which was a lot of fun.
I remember that one
because we didn't have to do contests.
Who came up with that?
I did.
Yeah, that was your.
It was an interesting case where we had been bought by the ski magazines, and they had this crazy idea of doing their own snowboard magazine. And Brian Selstrom luckily said, nope, there's no way we're going to let that happen. Yeah. But he had to play the game for a while. And so I was very tight with our production director, Sean Rogers. I ended up marrying her. But she sat me down and said, look, I was kind of having a hard time, and I'd kind of lost control at Transworld, and I was floating. And she said, look, we're going to do this magazine. You can do it, but you need to come up with a plan. You need to present it to Brian because he wants us to do it. So I sat down and came up with the editorial plan. It was going to be a free writing magazine based on adults, more adults than teenagers, and their kids, who were pre-teenagers. So kind of catching the other people. But the main thing, no contest. It was going to be a free writing magazine. And I worked with a couple of women from the ski magazines at first. Dana White was super cool. And, but we definitely had the intent of wrestling it away from them. Yeah. At some point, and that's what happened. And that was a great magazine because I discovered surf carving, which, developed in Aspen. A guy named Cliff Ahumada had moved there, and he was a black surfer like I was. Blacks, that is. And, then there was people like Joey Cabell and Mike Doyle got into it, surfing legends who ended up being super good. And I remember I went to a contest in at Buttermilk that Body Glove ran, and Ian Cairns was running that. So a legendary surfer was running the snowboard events too. And Ian looked over and saw Joey Cabell's name on the side of his video camera and introduced me. And I had a Burton with Variplate bindings on it, so he could adjust it for his giant ski boots. Yeah. He took off and came back a snowboarder. He was gone 2.5 hours, I think, and taught himself. He was an incredible surfer. But so he started terrorizing Buttermilk along with the other surf carvers, and Mike Doyle got into it, and they were both super good. And it was the most fun I've ever had, not going that fast vertically, but just horizontally. Yeah. And just laying it out and carving. Like Jerry Lopez says, you can do 50 bottom turns in one run. And,
well, Jerry's running his big wave challenge, right? Like, which is just, it's all about style. It's all about carving. It's all about the feel.
That was fun. And so I finally hit my niche in snowboarding, where it was like I could do it, and had a great time. And I got to hire James Casimus finally. Rad. And he was wonderful to work with. Yeah. So we had a great time with that one and had quite a following. Yeah. So
it reached the people it was intended for. Yeah. I remember reading it. I remember having it at the shop and reading it and being like, this isn't for me, but it's beautiful pictures. It's inspiring. It kind of felt like what the early Transworld snowboarding felt like.
Well, exactly.
Not so much crap.
No, because I did it. And got to start over again and go through that thing. And lots of powder, which was cool. And that's the most surfy thing there is riding powder.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun. And I did Warp magazine for a while. That was surf, snow, skating.
I remember Warp,
music.
Yeah. And then the Warp Tour came out of Warp magazine. Right. Yeah.
And Fran Richards had a lot to do with that. And
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome to put that on Mike, because I forgot the Warp Tour started from that magazine. There was skate, snow, and music. Is that right?
Yeah, music was the other one. Surf, skate, snow, and music.
Surf, skate, snow, music.
And it was first called Blast. Yeah. Lee Crane was doing it. And they did the obvious trip, surf, skate, snow, in the same day.
Yeah.
Probably went to a concert too.
Yeah.
And then it evolved to somebody else had the name Blast and went into Warp. So
Warp was really like, there's an era of snowboarding that's like the Warp Tour era.
Right. It was kind of like the X Games. It was a phenomenon that kind of came along and did it.
It laid the foundation for those X Games, right? Like that
and
was
Board Aid was a big deal. Like you were talking about doing charity stuff. That was huge. And that was another thing that Fran got deeply involved with. And I remember when Nirvana was just breaking, and we had a skate photographer named Otis Bartholomew, who had a punk band called Fluff.
Nice. Small case
F, L-U-F. But he'd been a roadie for Nirvana and stuff. He knew all those guys. And Nirvana played in Tijuana, and the whole staff went. I didn't go because I had kids.
No way.
And it was funner than hell.
Yeah.
But I went to Geffen with Fran because he would sold them ads.
Mm.
And I got a mobile of the baby, chasing the dollar bill. I've still got somewhere.
No way.
Folded up. But I got to go to Geffen because Fran loved having the editors go on sales calls.
Oh, that's so sick.
That one I was totally up for.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was one of my fondest memories there, just the timing, the connection. The music scene was just blowing up and everything was cool. Snowboarding was part of it.
Yeah, that would have been the raddest magazine to work for, just because of the access to so many amazing people.
It was.
Yeah.
It was a fun one.
Yeah. That's incredible, man.
But Transworld was a happening place. It's now a brewery.
Yeah.
I just went to a concert and shot photos there a couple of weeks ago, but I was in our former marketing department, watching my friends on stage. But it was the coolest building when it was on Airport Road, and Louise Balmo was remodeling it into tree houses. I mean, it had the best offices ever.
Cool.
And it was just a fun place. It was like Disneyland. There was skateboard land and there was snowboard land. And the funny thing was at the beginning, because we had some incredible skate guys in there all the time. And my old staff is laughing at snowboarders for grabbing.
Right.
Why are you grabbing?
Right.
You don't need to grab. What the fuck? What are you grabbing? Why are they calling it skate tricks? They would just be hammering on everything about it. So we were not only trying to get in the resorts, we were trying to survive our own building.
I'm surprised you're the first person to bring that up on the show in 7 years. Why are we grabbing?
No, it's a good question.
Yeah.
I didn't have an answer for him.
Yeah. Because with skateboarding, it was like late grabs, early grabs. Like there was you
had to do it.
You had to do it or your board would fall off.
So snowboarding just stylistically just grabbed onto it. That was it. But there was never a good explanation why.
Yeah, there could be.
And it'd be interesting to think about how would it evolve without grabbing. And what would it look like? I don't know.
It would look like freestyle skiing.
There you go. Maybe that's why they did it.
Right?
A lot of stuff was an identity thing. I mean, like if you associated with certain things, it was cool.
Yep.
And obviously skateboarding was leading the charge on everything. It'd come 100%. Out of surfing, but it took over.
Yeah. Yeah.
The so-called extreme sports thing was all based on skating.
100%. Yeah.
Because I was lucky enough, like I said, to be editor of the Skateboard magazine when the whole vert thing was coming in '86. And I'd been negotiating with Larry Balma all summer to get out of the wood shop, and I shot myself with a piece of wood in the groin. And I said, I got to get out of here. This is when I was doing it by myself. It didn't hurt that bad, but the potential was great.
Yeah.
So Larry finally hired me to do the skateboard magazine, and I had zero experience with skateboarding, but I knew how to be an editor, and that's what they needed.
Yeah.
So I was the guy who was the first real editor for Transworld Skateboarding and helped organize those guys and teach them how to do it. And Grant Britton was a genius, and Dave Carson was a genius. So we had a great crew.
It's kind of crazy how Transworld Skateboarding was, and correct me if I'm wrong, like Thrasher was the main thing. Transworld was kind of the chasing the coattails thing. But then Transworld Snowboarding was that to Snowboarder, right? Like Snowboarder was the kind of new guy trying to come in and
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were the ones that overtook, International Snowboard Magazine, unfortunately.
Right.
I wish they could have survived. I would have loved to have been in the market, because you always have to have two magazines.
Absolutely.
But I wish they would have survived and Snowboarder had just stayed out of it.
It's so incredible that Snowboarder and Transworld were owned by the same company there at the end. Hey?
Oh, at the end, it's insane what happened. They owned
bizarre.
everything, all the surf magazines, all the snowboard magazines, and then they killed them. And I found out that mine was killed, Transworld was killed, long after I was there, because Men's Health had oversold their subscriptions and said they had more subscribers than they did and got caught. And so they tried to convert all the Transworld readers into subscribers to Men's Health.
Oh, what?
And what a way to kill a magazine. And of course, the women were totally pissed.
Yeah.
Because you have a subscription to Men's Health.
Oh,
it was the craziest corporate
God.
thing in the world.
Yeah.
And it just was a horrible ending.
You know, the thing that really shocked me, and again, I was shocked by finding out that Craig didn't sign his own boards. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a naive person.
You're a true believer.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't any concern for the subscribers. That some people subscribed to this magazine was an afterthought. They were after advertisers. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't in the business of creating the culture. They were in the business of making some cash.
Well, one issue was we were really adamant, or I was really adamant about not letting marketing or advertising influence our editorial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody could ever come to me and say, you got to run a Sims writer next issue.
Got it.
And I was very strict about that.
Thank you for that.
And Larry Balma.
That's important.
And Brian Selstrom and Peggy were all very supportive of that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I don't know if I could have survived if I was a normal magazine guy kind of stroking the advertisers.
Right.
So that was pretty much our policy. And I was very grateful to have that kind of control.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen very often. Whereas, I mean, Surfer and Surfing, there was a classic thing where, anyway, the guys at Surfer got around one night and they'd sent a letter out to the industry saying, it's a well-known fact that Surfing Magazine sells out its editorial pages, and listed a cover shot with an ad campaign and
come on,
and sent that out. And I don't think they really intended to send it out, but they did.
Right.
And they said, but the kicker was, when a fledgling magazine like Breakout, which was our surf magazine, doesn't have to resort to such measures, why should you?
Yeah.
And this was Surfer shooting at the heart of Surfing Magazine, and Surfing went and got a private detective and found out who sent it.
Wow.
And went right back to Surfer, and my friend who was running publisher and editor of Surfer got kind of hidden away for a while.
Oh, wow.
So that was a major scandal in the surf industry. So, I mean, I had that kind of experience.
Right.
And I knew that that's how things were done a lot. And I don't know how they were done in other magazines. I just knew that we wanted to stay out of that. And I wasn't a marketing guy. I could have made a lot more money if I'd gone into sales.
I definitely had a moment in Vegas at the SIA trade show. You might have even been there, with Harry Guns. Fran Richards is at the table, and there was an explanation of, like, listen, here's how you do it. You're a fledgling brand. You know, there were other guys there from other smaller brands. Go to our magazine, open up the editorial page, choose from those photographers, hire them to shoot your guys, build your ads with those shots, and the rest of those shots are going to get sent to the magazine. It's not rocket science.
No, that's Fran Richards 101.
Yeah.
No, we would educate people on, we wanted to be as transparent as possible without manipulating. And a lot of that happened where Burton would go do a photo shoot and then offer us a story like Peter and Jean in South America.
Sure.
And the shit was amazing. I mean, the photos were fantastic. And because we were scratching for content.
It was probably you that said it. He said, look, the folder of slides I get from Burton every month is 10 times what everybody else combined is giving.
Right. So,
like, if you want Burton to not be dominant in these magazines, you need to send us content.
They were brilliant in that. And it's we'll look at anything. I mean, it doesn't mean we're going to run it, but if you have more shots, your chances go way up. Well, one of our biggest discoveries was a guy named Stefan Fiedler, who hit about season 2. He dropped on us the most professional shots of Europeans you could even imagine. People he'd never even heard of, but the shots were so incredibly good that all of a sudden, boom, we had this big European cut. We had a lot of cover shots out of his stuff. And
wow.
He was so good.
Yeah.
And that was just a case where just a new artist comes on the scene, unexpected, and you got to be smart enough to run it, if you get in the photos.
Yeah, I remember watching so closely about, because in the beginning, you could see some editorial shots of older boards. Like someone might have just got a good shot and their board was 3 years old or something. But by year 3, year 4, you're seeing next year's stuff.
Catalog stuff.
You're seeing next year's in the magazine this year. And it was the same. I'd love to talk about the transition from the photographers. Now, Sean Sullivan talked about the photographers were the bigwigs in snowboarding for those years. And then when video came in, probably 91, 92, 93, the video guys started calling the shots on the shoots and started telling, hey, you get out of the shot. You go. So then everything goes kind of long lens there for a bit.
It was definite transition to video.
Yeah.
And then the internet after that.
Yeah. Were you there for that transition while the internet was happening?
Yeah.
And could you see that coming? And was it?
Lee Crane was really smart because he went and got a job doing that.
Yeah. He left to, what did he do? It was
he was the let's see, it was a company that was doing golf stuff. It was, I forget the name of it.
Okay.
But he saw it coming way before anybody. He was on it.
Yeah.
He was into Wired magazine and stuff. He was into the new stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he did it at a time when I needed help getting those giant issues out. And it was really bad timing.
Yeah.
But no, he saw the future and he went to it.
Yeah. And how long were you there? When did you?
I was there for 14 years. I think when they finally gave me my thing.
Yeah.
Saying you've been here 14 years. And I did a resort guide was the last thing I did.
Yeah.
But, I went through a divorce and some stuff that was pretty gnarly and kind of lost touch with what was going on. Then started up Snowboard Life. So it was a couple of cycles for me.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, I got offered the job of editorial director of Surfing Magazine.
Oh, wow. That's a pedigree.
For over $100,000 a year. And my wife says, I don't think you're going to get along with the publisher.
Wow.
Who I know now, and we're friends, but it was a drive up to San Clemente. But somehow we talked about it and decided it probably wasn't the right move. And I gave it to one of my editors, a Snowboard Life named Scooter Leonard. It's like the biggest gift I've ever given anybody. He didn't get that much, and I don't think he was editorial director, but he got a great job out of it.
Yeah.
But that would have been the perfect time to transition out.
Yeah.
If I was going to do it. Because my heart was in the sport totally for probably the first 5 years. When it was new and exciting and everything was growing, and then it got so commercial, it's like, it's hard to love it the same when it's established. It's like, I like things that are new. I like building them up, doing things like starting the Amateur Association, then watching it grow. But,
also once snowboarding has caught up to where
it's mainstream.
If you're going to pick a sport, your sport is surfing, right?
Right. Well, that was it. I went back to surfing. It was like, this was a hiatus. It wasn't a permanent. I mean, I miss surfing. I'd been gone 14 winters. I used to compete longboarding and I had to quit. So I couldn't do it anymore because if you're not doing it year round. So I was very eager to get back to the beach. Mm-hmm. And that's where I am now, within walking distance. So
yeah, this is an incredible spot.
I'm very, very happy to be back in Del Mar.
Yeah.
And but it was an incredible experience being able to create something like that and put together teams. I mean, for me, it was always about getting the right people, like setting up bands.
Yeah.
I'm a musician, and I love the collaboration of jamming with other people, like I'm going to do at 5 o'clock this afternoon with my new French friend.
Nice.
But the team thing was pretty cool because it was a family deal. The tribe is incredible. I mean, the first generations are still super tight.
Oh, yeah.
As you've discovered every time you talk to them, the stories are the same. And
the cross-pollination is so, like, it's like you have all the people who are all spread out all over the world were together at those things. And and that's what I'm realizing through this conversation with you is that I was a part of that, visually looking at these images that, you talk about the sunny day at Baker, and I know what it means for it to be sunny and powder at Baker.
Oh, I know. It's impossible. It just doesn't happen.
Everything. It happens once every 5 years or something. It's like Big Wednesday for us.
Then to go to Bend the following weekend and have the same thing happening again, it was going, oh, man. We'd be dead without it, and we had to come up with a whole season's worth of magazines.
See, that's what I'm doing here. This trip that I'm on, I'm going for a season worth of interviews in a short trip.
You got to learn to be economical when you don't have that many reresources. But I'm glad you've crammed me into your schedule.
Oh, it's so fun. And I apologize for yesterday being so hectic, but yesterday was insane.
Yeah, no, it turned out actually better for me the way.
Me too. That was a really nice breakfast, and this conversation's been incredible, man.
Yeah.
You're one of the mega historians of our sport. We should talk about that, about the fact that.
Well, I actually, the tragedy now, I mean, having started the Surf Museum, is that there are archives of snowboard photos, including mine, under the bed in the next room, that need to be converted to digital.
Absolutely.
And that's why I went and started a museum in my head and on my computer.
Yeah. Just
to plant the seed that we have to have a snowboard-only museum somewhere.
Yeah.
If it's going to be me doing it, it's going to be in my living room. Or it's going to be in Southern California or whatever.
Right.
Because there's debates both ways, whether it should be in the mountains, Salt Lake City, or Southern California, which is
maybe Canada.
Or Canada would be nice.
Sure.
The best thing is where somebody wants to go in the off season.
Yeah, sure.
Like the vacation. So there's a strong argument for down here. But
absolutely.
Nonetheless, someplace, because Copper Mountain, the USASA guys are talking about, we got a transit center that they may give us space. And then I'm going, well, who owns it? Well, this group owns it, not the resort. And I said, well, resorts are risky enough because they change ownership all the time.
Yeah.
I said, you got to think about a town like Frisco.
Yeah.
Where the town, and for us with the Surf Museum, Oceanside had buildings they would let us have for $1 a year. I mean, funky real estate. And they finally gave us $300,000 in an old strip club.
Yeah.
And we turned it into a museum. A year later, that money would not have been there because the recession hit. But something like that has to happen for snowboarding because we are lagging in our history horribly.
Big time.
The museum in Vail is a ski snowboard event, and I just think we need to have a pure snowboarding venue, period.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't get the full support that you need.
And there's pockets of people like Ernie DeLoss. The stuff that he's got in his rafters there is priceless. Priceless
we
stuff.
could have a museum as big as Costco if we wanted to fit. But there has to be something. The Surf Museum that I'm part of, the California Surf Museum that I helped start in 1986, is pretty small. There's one in San Clemente that's huge.
Yeah.
It has the biggest collection. But the main thing is there's at least a couple of them.
Yes.
There were ones scattered that have gone out of business. But my vision was to have a museum in every surf center and have them connected like the University of California where exhibits could rotate.
So cool.
With snowboarding, that would make a lot of sense because you've got to have one on the East Coast.
Yep.
You could have one even in Wisconsin, a jiving museum, who knows? But you definitely have to have one in Tahoe. Where the pockets were Mount Baker, Hardcore, Tahoe.
Yeah.
Like I said, even Southern Colorado had something going on.
Calgary, Whistler.
Boulder.
Yeah, Vermont. I mean, the stuff that Jake capped.
Calgary first and then Whistler. Canada'd be great.
I'm pushing for Canada.
I would love to go.
Yeah, when I was talking with Mouse about it, it was like, let's go somewhere where, the land is completely free and there's no fight over space, and get something massive and then make an action sports museum that has wings that are like surfing, BMX, skateboarding, snowboarding.
Well, see, that's the problem.
Make it a destination.
One of those is hard to do. Because luckily there's a skateboarding Hall of Fame that just gave away like 36 things at once.
I saw that.
That was pretty nuts.
Yeah.
But no, because the museum in Oceanside could have been surf, skate, snow easily because that was the center. I mean, Transworld being there.
Yes.
It would have been a really natural thing to do, but it's
expensive.
It's expensive.
Retail,
and if you do
right?
all those sports.
Yeah.
It's a great idea, but I just like to get this one done and start there. But the problem is I've got photos John Foster's got photos. God Motil's got photos from the first years that we were involved, and they're priceless. I mean,
priceless, right?
And they are deteriorating and need to be converted. Guys started doing some of his, but there has to be a serious effort.
It's tedious work too, from what I understand.
No, you just got to get a scanner and hire somebody to run it. Anyway, there's a shitload of snowboard photographers, priceless stuff.
Yes.
And then somebody reminded me and said, "What about your interview cassette tapes?"
Ooh, yeah.
They're going to deteriorate even faster.
Yes, yeah.
So, because Richard Chesky's been offering to convert all this stuff, and so it needs to be done before we're all dead and it gets scattered.
Yeah, so independently, you guys are all noticing the same thing.
Yeah, and
Mouse with his films, because he shot in film, and he was trying to get Sonny Miller's stuff.
Well, Sonny Miller is the prime example where luckily his stuff ended up in good hands.
Yes,
and storage with climate controls.
Right,
but it's still there and it hasn't been. It needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But Sonny would be the best example of that. He has some great early snowboard shots.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And Scott Starr's another one.
Scott Starr's
not in great health, but he's got the shit.
Yeah.
And
we should probably make a list and just reach out to everybody and say, look.
Well, I tried to approach Son White via his website, which wasn't terribly successful, thinking his foundation. And then somebody said, "Oh, Jamie Salter," because
that would have been me.
He's got more money than God, right?
Well,
that would be you.
I also would have said Doug Palladini as well, because Vans has their hands in all the
skateboarding
sports.
Thing going.
Right.
So anyway, it would be nice to get some funding and at least get the photos preserved in a library to start with.
Yes,
and like some kind of an archive library, and then hopefully find a building at some point.
Yeah.
So the good stuff is not just in private hands. I mean, Dennis Azari has a great collection.
Huge.
Salt Lake. Yeah. And Rick Alden.
Yeah.
Has got everything else, including some of my best stuff. So anyway, my dream is, I'm really sad that snowboarding history has not developed quicker than it has.
It's a double-edged sword for me, because I feel like I didn't learn this from someone else. You know what I mean? Like, I went out there and I started at the beginning, and every step along the way, I'm learning some new amazing shit about the sport that I just love so much.
The reason I wanted to talk to you so much is because I'm just gladder than hell somebody cares about history.
Yeah.
And is doing something about it.
And a bunch of people do.
And this is
the people
awesome.
that listen to this show. Yeah.
I'm so thrilled that there's because I haven't had an interview since Let It Ride for Craig Kelly.
Yeah.
That I was interviewed in the guitar shop I was working at, and I was having trouble remembering shit then. But it's wonderful to be on the record, and which is what I want everybody. I think the work you're doing is fabulous, and I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, thanks.
Because that's what's gonna.
It's a reflection of you back. It's
gonna get lost
when you were talking about your first experiences with Transworld and interviewing and all, and before Transworld, your very first foray into interviewing. I'm like, I see myself reflected in that. Like, that's the thing that brought me into this.
Well, you're a journalist and you're curious, which is the first quality for a journalist, is you want to know for yourself.
Yes, that's
and then
it.
You want to share it.
Sure.
But mainly you want to know for yourself.
Yeah.
You want to get to see what makes this tick.
100%.
Who's this guy?
And it's so fun to talk with people about it. It's a huge network of people with a shared history. It's like a family.
Well, the one thing I wanted to show you before you leave is I put a thing up on Facebook for Jake, because I was so removed I didn't realize how horrible his death was, or his whole fast years. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the movie that just came out, Dear Rider. And then I listened to your podcast with Donna, and I went, holy shit, I've missed the boat. I got to do a paddle out right now. So I went and got some rose petals, and I paddled out on the most beautiful day and put it up on Facebook. And so I scattered the rose petals outside, left some on top of my board, and this 2-wave set came through out of nowhere because I was way outside everyone. And I let the first one go, and the second one I'd taken off, and some guy's paddling at the face. So I'm watching him, and ended up purling, and all the flowers go everywhere. And I just came up laughing on, oh, Jake's just kicking my ass because I had not surfing enough. Because he and Donna talked about his 100 days a year, and he was so hardcore, and he's going, I'm a disgrace. I really need to get serious about this, seriously about having fun doing it.
Yeah.
And Jake was all about that. And so I went outside and watched the dolphins go through the flower petals. There was a mom and babies.
Oh, wow.
The sun's blazing, but there's a fog bank in the background. And a friend's daughter took a picture of the sun shining through the fog bank. So I ran that on Facebook. Yeah. And it was just my way overdue tribute. And I wasn't grieving over Jake like it happened yesterday because I was so removed. It didn't really hit me until I saw both those things and went, oh my God. Because, I knew Jake and Donna pretty good. I go to their parties and I met the kids and I was just going, how insane the way Jake went as the guy most in position to have fun for the rest of his life. And for Donna to have taken over and dealt with that responsibility, it was just, I want to get back in touch with her if possible. And talk about Jake.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to have closure with her at all. And
she says she listens to the show. She's listened to some.
With the sport,
yeah,
it's the same thing. It's like you kind of want to reach some closure with what you've done by seeing it preserved, the best parts of it preserved, so people can discover it in the future. And I was just lucky enough to be there at the beginning and have the experience to know what was going to happen and to take care and know everything that was happening was history.
Yeah.
And was going to be so, and I really appreciate the fact that you got that.
Oh, thanks, man.
Out of it, because that's what got me going as a surfer.
That's it.
I've worshipped magazines.
Yeah, and I was a magazine worshiper for
any
sure.
Media now.
Even more than the videos. Like the videos came along and there was just too much to keep track of.
Yours is the first podcast I think I've ever listened to. So thanks for turning me on to that medium.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. You think of any interest you have, and there's gonna be content there for forever.
But thanks for hunting me down, and you better go get on your
plane.
Yeah,
I better. Thanks, Kevin. This is awesome. FNRad shout-outs this week to Kevin Kinnear and Guy Motil for changing my life forever in the best way possible. Extra special thanks to Kevin for spending the day with me and showing me around Del Mar, taking me for breakfast, and educating me on what it was like those first years of snowboarding at resorts. I'd also like to say a big what up to everyone who said hi this week on the hill or through DMs. Stoked so many of you are enjoying this season. I can't tell you how fun it is to record these things, and you amazing listeners make the whole thing possible. Oh yeah, and talk to Ken Achenbach for all your Whistler real estate needs, please. And then be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.